What's up guys, Dr. Jared here, Tone and Tighten, and these are 9 of the best exercises that you can do to strengthen your hips. Now, why are strong hips important? A lot of people don't realize how important they are until those hips start to hurt. But believe it or not, hip strength is important not just in your hip health, but in your knee and lower back as well. In fact, a lot of the knee and lower back pain that I see in my physical therapy clinic is treated by addressing weakness in the hips. That's going to help your knees to function better, and it's also going to help to support and stabilize your back better. So these are great options for you. Now, let me start by saying that my all-time favorite hip strengthening exercises are large compound exercises where you can progressively overload them. So for example, we're talking about a squat, like a barbell squat. We're talking about some sort of hinge, like a deadlift, a barbell deadlift. And then we're also talking about some sort of extension biased exercise. Hip thrusts are my favorite for that. But if you don't have access to that equipment, or pain or weakness limits your ability to perform some of those exercises, don't despair, because I've got things for you too. What we need to do is train and strengthen each muscle group in isolation in order to work up to the ability to perform some of those larger movements. And so I've got all of that covered for you. We're going to start simple, basic, kind of beginner style exercises, and then hopefully be able to progress and advance up to those larger compound exercises. Hope this is beneficial for you. First exercise coming at you right now. These first 4 exercises are going to isolate and strengthen the muscle groups that take the hip through its 4 major movement patterns. Those are flexion, forward, extension, backwards, abduction out to the side, and then rotation in this motion right here. Again, we're going to start by isolating each of those with a specific exercise and then move into more functional exercises during the course of this video. So let's get started. Hip flexors is going to be the first one. You're going to sit down on the ground with your legs out in front of you, slightly recline, support yourself with your hands. Now the first step is I want you to fire your quad muscle right here. So we're going to fire your quad, we're going to contract that, keep your leg nice and straight, and then use your hip flexors to lift your foot up off of the ground about 12 to 18 inches, and then slowly return back down to that starting position. That is what we call a straight leg raise. Again, you're trying to focus and isolate that hip flexor muscle with this exercise. What I recommend is we're going to start with about 10 to 15 reps, and then we're going to repeat that 3 times. But honestly, in my clinic, it's not uncommon to progress patients up to even 3 sets of 20 and 3 sets of 30. So keep that in mind. Hip flexors, check. Let's roll over onto our side. The next thing we're going to do is work on the hip abductors. And so the glute med, the glute min, these muscles right here on the side of your hip. I'm laying on my side. I've got my bottom leg bent with my top leg out straight. What I'm going to do is keep that top leg straight and lift your heel up towards the ceiling, and then slowly return back down to that starting position. You should feel this one right here, kind of the side of the glute area. This is a great exercise. If you have knee pain, if you have lower back pain, this is one that we do a lot because that gluteus medius and minimus group is so important in stabilizing your back and helping your knee, putting your knee in a better position. Same parameters apply on this. Start with about 3 sets of 10 to 15, work into 3 sets of 20 to 30 as you can. While we're in this position, we can do the hip rotators. So now I'm going to bend both of my knees. My knees are together, my feet are together, but now what I'm going to do is rotate at my hip, separate my knees, and then return back to the starting position. So keep the soles of your feet together, but now we're separating the knees. It's a little bit different motion than that last exercise that I just showed you. We're working more hip rotation with this. You're going to feel it a little more kind of around the back of your backside, a little bit deeper. That's where your piriformis and some of those other hip rotators sit. 3 sets of 10 is a good place to start. Work into 3 sets of 20 to 3 sets of 30 as you can. The last muscle group that we've got are the hip extensors. So the glute muscles, the glute max in the back. My favorite way to work that one at home with no equipment is going to be with a bridge. Lay on your back with your knees bent. Now what we're going to do is squeeze and contract the glutes, lift those hips up towards the ceiling, really focus on contracting the glutes while you're up there, and then return back down to the starting position. So lift, squeeze, hold 1, 2, and then return right back down. This is another great exercise for lower back pain. This is one that I give to patients regularly to do at home, just because we're working through this entire extension pattern. We're working on extending through the hips, extending through the back. This is a great exercise for those areas. Same parameters one more time. 3 sets of 10, work into 3 sets of 20 to 3 sets of 30 as your strength allows. Now, whenever I'm working with a patient or client one-on-one, we're not going to spend the entire time down on the ground. We want to get up, we want to get into more functional movement patterns. Exercises 5 and 6 are a great way to do that. Now, they do require some equipment. They will require a band or a loop. These are resistance bands. These ones are made out of cloth. You can get them in different resistances. These ones are made out of kind of more of a rubber material. Cheap to pick up, a little more expensive to pick up, in my opinion, a little more comfortable. And so what I'll do, if you don't have any of these, go ahead and click the link in the description down below. I've got links to my favorite bands down below. But that being said, here's exercise number 5 and exercise number 6. We're going to put this around our knees. The first thing that I like to do, I call it a crab walk in my clinic. What you're going to do, so the resistance here is pulling my knees together. This is a great exercise for your hip abductors, these muscles right here. First step is to get down into a crouch position, kind of a quarter squat position. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a big step with my leading leg and then a half a step with my trailing leg. I don't ever want your feet and knees to come all the way together. I want there to be some band or some tension on that band at all times. Quarter squat, so big step, half step, and that's what it looks like right there. I should not have done so many of these earlier. I filmed my B-roll before this. My hip abductors, they're feeling it a little bit. But anyway, this is what it looks like right here. Again, a great exercise for your hip abductors. What I tend to tell people is let's take about 10 steps to the right, 10 steps to the left, or about 5 steps, whatever kind of the space that you have allows you to do. But ultimately, we're getting into about 10 steps 3 times. 3 sets of about 10 steps each direction is a good number to shoot for. And so that was lateral. If we want to also include the hip flexors and the hip extensors, what we can do is walk in a straight line. Now with this, I do want your knees apart still, so your feet slightly wider than your hips, still down in that same kind of quarter squat position. But now what we're going to do is take a big step forward, pull with that hip flexor, and now we're going to pull with this hip flexor on the other side as we take those steps forward. Again, feet are wider than your hips, band is trying to pull them together, your muscles are not allowing them to do that. Now, in this case, when you get to the end of your track, don't turn around. Now what we're going to do is we're going to walk backwards. And so now I'm pulling with this glute to walk back in this direction. Keep those knees nice and wide. The tempo is nice and slow. Really try to focus and isolate on squeezing and contracting those glutes through those movements. And so again, same parameters on that one, about 10 steps forward and then about 10 steps backwards. And then we're going to repeat that 3 times. And finally, let's finish with the 3 hip strengthening exercises that I feel every person on the planet should be doing. These are the 3 that most every patient that comes in to see me will do some form of this at some time. We're going to do some squats, we're going to do some deadlifts, and we're going to do some hip thrusters. Now for these, I prefer to do them with a barbell. If you've got one available, that's probably, again, my favorite. But if you don't have a barbell, you can do them with dumbbells. If you don't have any weights, you can certainly do them without resistance at all. Still going to be beneficial for you. You're just going to have to do a few more reps. And so let's get started. So air squats. So the squat, what we're going to do, separate your feet about hip width apart. Toes are angled out slightly. Maintain good posture up here through your chest and shoulders, so shoulders back. The first movement is to hinge at your hips, so shoot your butt backwards as you lower yourself down as low as you can go into that squat. Again, if pain or injury or even just range of motion limitations are limiting your ability to perform this, just go as low as you can, and then what I want you to do is try to work lower and lower and lower into that squat as you can. If you do have some dumbbells laying around, I kind of like up here right on the shoulders, and then the movement looks just exactly the same. That's how we would add resistance to that one. 3 sets of about 10 to 15. If you don't have any resistance, you might even do like 20 to 30 of those. Next, let's get into the deadlift. And so let's see, we'll give you a lateral view. Feet are again about hip width apart. Lower back is nice and straight. First movement is the same, so I want to hinge at my hips. So break your hips. That means I just want the pelvis to move backwards as you fold forward like this. So you're kind of reaching down here towards your toes as low as you can until the hamstrings limit you or until your lower back starts to round. That's kind of your signal that you're done. And then pull right back up to that starting position. Using your glutes, so coming down, and then what we're gonna do is contract and squeeze the glute to come up out of the bottom of that deadlift. If you had some dumbbells, again, looks just exactly the same. You're just gonna hold the weights. So break at the hips first. Keep the dumbbells fairly close to your legs. I don't want them to be way out here. Puts a lot more stress on your lower back. And then pull with the glutes to return back up to that starting position. Exercise number 3, or I guess exercise number 9 in this video, is gonna be the hip thrust. What you're going to do is back up to a couch or your bed or just some surface that hits you at about your shoulder blades. This is actually a little bit tall. I'm gonna get up onto it like this just so that it's kind of in a comfortable spot on my back. And so now what we're gonna do is, in this position, I'm gonna contract my glutes to lift my hips up towards the ceiling. What I want is a straight line kind of through my torso, so my hips are nice and straight, but my knee is at a 90-degree bend. That's the top of the hip thrust, and then return back down to that start position. Try to keep your gaze in a neutral position. I don't want your chin tucked all the way down into your chest. I also don't want you to necessarily look up at the ceiling. So just try to keep your head, your neck, your gaze in a neutral position as you're going through the hip thrust motion. Now again, if you've got a dumbbell available, you can grab that bad boy, put it right here on your hips, and then that just adds a little bit of some resistance. The mechanics all still stay the same. That's what that one looks like. So about 3 sets of 10 to 15 if you've got some resistance. If you don't have resistance, you can probably get through 20 to 30 of those 3 times. Now, what if your hips are tight? These are all great strengthening exercises, but if they're tight, if they're not moving, if you just feel stiff, what we need to do is stretch your hips out instead of strengthen your hips. Luckily for you, I've got you covered. I actually shot a video just for you with tight hips. What I want you to do is click on this video right here. That's gonna help you with some of that hip tightness you're experiencing. YouTube thinks you might like this video. Check that one out, see if YouTube's right. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to Tone and Tighten yet, hit the circle right here to do that. I'd love to see you back for future videos. Till next time, see you again soon.